Welcome back to Live With, brought to you by Yamamoto Nutrition. I'm your host, Dave Palumbo, and today's guest of the evening is a very close friend of mine and very special person to our industry. He is the owner, or the original owner of, well, not the original owner, one of the owners of the Gold's Gym franchise, and he's probably known to more bodybuilders in our industry than are willing to admit. The guy I'm talking about is Ed Connors. Welcome.
Hello, Dave.
Ed, there's no denying that the Gold's Gym franchise is probably the most well-known Gold's Gym gym franchise in the world. Made famous obviously by the original Joe Gold, but I mean, you took it to a new level. What made you decide to purchase Gold's Gym when you did back in the day?
I thought it would be a fun investment. Part of me too, I think I had joined a gym to lose weight for the Army, and I remember being just appalled at the high pressure sales. And I know in the back of my mind, I thought if I ever had a chance to operate that kind of business, I would be different.
When you purchased Gold's Gym, give us an idea, because people don't know that far back. What was it like? What was the Gold's Gym that you bought like before you bought it?
It was, it was the Mecca thanks to Arnold, but it was really pretty primitive by today's standards. And
Right.
keep in mind, people were coming from all over the world to train at the Mecca, and yet, nowadays you can find comparable places in almost every major city, or even lesser cities. I mean, it's a whole day. That was 38 years ago. That was February 28th, 1979, that Pete Kremkowski and Tim Kimber and I basically took over the single location in Santa Monica that was only 400 square feet. I'm also an architect, so over the years I've focused a lot on square footage, but 4,400 square feet. I mean, that's
Tiny.
That's nothing nowadays in the fitness industry.
Now you moved the gym from Santa Monica to where it is now. What prompted that? More space?
Well, it was mainly a parking issue. I was working as an architect consultant on the parking garage that was being constructed for the new Santa Monica Mall, and I knew how bad the parking situation would get. And at the same time, I was also working for the office of Charles Eames in Venice. People may know him from the famous Eames lounge chair. And there was this warehouse building available about a block away in Venice. And I thought, well, maybe it's time to bring the gym back to its roots. And the first bay of that warehouse was 6,600 square feet.
Wow.
So in 1981, thanks to Tim Kimber's genius with handling a studio that wanted to film in the gym, we were able to move the gym from Santa Monica back to Venice. So it was like rediscovering its original roots. We were the location, basically the third location for Gold's Gym is now only maybe 3 blocks from the original one that you see in Pumping Iron.
Right. What did, if you don't mind me asking you, just out of curiosity, what did Gold's Gym franchise cost back in 1979 when you bought it?
Well, again, there was no franchising. I actually opened the first Gold's franchise in 1980, and I guess you're asking what that cost. That was a $1,400 flat fee for the year.
Wow. Now, but what did the gym cost you when you bought that original gym?
We bought, Pete, Tim, and I, or it was another individual before Tim, but we basically paid $100,000 for the gym, but we also and took over another $150,000 in bad debt.
Oh, really?
So say $250,000, but it was basically $50,000 cash. I had saved $15,000 to buy a new BMW, and that ended up getting me 25% interest in Gold's Gym.
So you guys all pooled your money. You bought it. Did you think as a businessman that it would be a good investment, that it might pay off, or did you think, hey, I'm just doing this for a labor of love?
Well, to show you how difficult those early years were, and I mean, this is true for any small business, I didn't quit practicing being an architect until 1985. So for 6 years, I led two lives. I would come down to the gym at nights and check on things and do the books, and during the day I had this other life as an architect. And some of my fellow employees in various firms in the city knew my other life, but not everybody. So I really led two lives. It was an amazing time in my life.
Unbelievable. When you sold Gold's Gym, first of all, what year was that, and how many franchises were there at that point?
When we sold the first time, we sold in 1999 to a Brockway Moran, a private equity group in Boca Raton, Florida. And then I stayed on with them. Actually, Pete, Tim, and I were all shareholders, and we stayed on until 2004. At that time, when they sold the company to the current owners, there were 704 Gold's Gyms worldwide.
Wow, unbelievable. How many are there now?
Well, unfortunately, there are fewer than 600. They raised the franchise fees to levels that I think are unsustainable. They now want a percentage of gross revenue, which the Gold's Gym name is valuable, but not, we're not talking fast food.
Right.
So they're now charging almost as much as, say, McDonald's, and of course the business is quite different.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you made a mistake selling it, like you should have kept it?
No, I'm disappointed by what they've done with the brand. I mean, they're really destroying 25 years of hard work, but 25 years to own something is a long time. I mean, Joe Gold only owned Gold's Gym for 10 years.
Right.
So, and Gold's now was started in '65. So, we owned it for a long time. We were great caretakers of the brand.
It's interesting. I actually ran into Pete. I was in Venice maybe once, like over the last 4 years, and the one time I was there, Pete Gromkowski just happened to show up unannounced also, which was pretty cool, and he told me a little bit about the history as well. I heard, and I know you and I have talked about this, and I don't know if it's still the case. Are you not welcome in Gold's Gym in Venice?
Yeah, actually, I'm banned. I may be the only person banned. I'm quite proud of it because I went in there and I raised a stink about the quality of the merchandise that they had in the pro shop. They were, everybody nowadays pretty much silk screens the information, the labeling on the back of a shirt because you don't want that label rubbing on your neck. And they had their current clothing licensee was cutting out, the label from the supplier and sewing in a new Gold's one, so there was this bulky bulge on the back of the shirts, and it just, my God, that's no way. And their prices are, everything's gone up in price. So I was very sensitive to clothing because obviously more people have worn the shirt, the brand, than have trained in Gold's Gyms. I tell people we were really a clothing company masquerading as a gym chain at one point. We were doing incredible volume, and our gym owners were doing, you could basically make up your fee in a month. You could pay for the value of the name just by the profits from the clothing.
I mean, I remember too when I would go in there to do a photo shoot in the 90s. You didn't have to ask. You just went in there and you gave whatever clothing you needed for the photo shoot because you knew the branding was so important to see for the bodybuilders to be seen in the clothing in the magazines and wherever else they were being shot.
We got by giving. We had to, for our accountant, we had to quantify how much free merchandise and memberships we gave away each month, and I'd have to say it averaged almost $60,000 a month.
Wow.
But got us, back in the day, a full page ad in one of Weider's magazines, my ad might cost $35,000. We would get people to do the photo shoots in the gym wearing our clothes and with the Gold's Gym stripe all over over the mirrors. So you would pick up a Weider magazine and you could see 24 pages of Gold's Gym in there. If you put down the magazine or ask someone subliminally what was the gym chain they remember, they would obviously say Gold's Gym. So it was, and for those days are gone. You ask about regrets about selling, but we were part of a magical era. We were part of Women's Live, co-ed fitness, and and things like that. All that publicity in the magazines was priceless. That nowadays the magazines are virtually non-existent. It's all social media.
How did you determine who got free memberships? Because I know I never paid in there. I know that all the top bodybuilders got to train there for free pretty much. How would you determine like who got the free membership?
You know, it's funny. I mean, I remember when the Barbarians, walked in the door the first day. We were still down in Santa Monica, and they walked in their lumberjack shirts and bib overalls and said, "Hi, we're the Barbarians." And I thought, well, that's, they're interesting people, and we gave them a free membership from day one. And I think 20 years later, when we sold, one of them came up to me, probably David, and said, "Yeah, they want us to pay." Probably it's time, but they were, they were part of the color. They were, and we didn't want celebrities, I mean, Eddie Murphy wore a Gold's Gym jacket on. This is before they got difficult with promoting on TV, but Eddie Murphy wore our Gold's Gym leather jacket on MTV Awards for 4 hours.
Wow.
I mean, that's priceless, and it just amazes to me how, like now, even the new owners want to charge photographers to shoot in there.
Right. That's crazy.
We gave everybody free access, and in fact, Chris Lunn, Weedersford main photographer, even had a darkroom. An old day. We had a studio in the offices along with a darkroom for him, and
wow.
We gave all photographers carte blanche, and I gave all the Weeder people memberships. I mean, they lived in the valley, so. But no, it was a lot of goodwill. I mean, you gotta give to get.
Were you shocked when it became not only a stronghold for bodybuilders, but it became a stronghold for celebrities? You had a lot of celebrities. I remember when I came there in '94 for the first time, I was like blown away by all the stars who trained there. Mickey Rourke, Gregory Hines. The list went on and on and on. I can't even remember off the top of my head, but Stallone would come by there. I mean, it was just like a celebrity haven.
Well, a lot of that was we were on the west side of LA, and back in those early days too, there really weren't that many really good gyms, and personal training was in its infancy. And in fact, I kind of credit Chris Dickerson and Body by Jake Steinfeld as helping create that. Jake Steinfeld was up at working Universal Studios, in their tour section where he played the Hulk. I think that there were all those characters back then, like Red Sonja, right. He-Man, and Conan. So the actors would go up from the sound stages in Universal and go up there and see these bodybuilders, and they'd say, how do you get like that? What do you do? And then people like Jake with his New York street smarts, he'd say, well, come down to Gold's Gym Venice, I'll show you, but you're gonna have to pay. And I really think that's kind of how personal training started. And I always remember my dad was a surgeon, and I was kind of embarrassed because I was the son of a doctor, and we seemed to have a little more money than most people on the block. Right. And I said, "Dad, why do you have to charge so much?" And he said, "Son, if you came to me with a cold and I told you to take a couple aspirin and drink lots of liquids, are you more likely to do it if it's free advice or if I charge you $35? And I would see these young people coming into the gym and kind of bouncing off, better built guys in the gym, seeking information, but obviously they were looking, I think, for simple answers or something they wanted to hear. So I told the guys, I said, get some business cards made up and say, here's my card. If you want, I'll train you or work with you. And Chris Dickerson was one of the first ones. We gave him an office in the gym, and he would charge, a lot of times people didn't have a lot of money and what they wanted to charge an hour. So he would say, well, get two of your friends and I'll train the three of you for $10 each or $20 each. And that's really kind of how it started. And in fact, Tim and I, we didn't charge rent for trainers initially. I don't know how many years it went on like this, where there were a lot of people making a living as personal trainers. And when we sold the gym, I think there were almost 125 trainers working out of the gym for whom we were charging $400 a month rent. After a while, this is before cell phones. It got to be such a nuisance to take messages for personal trainers that we said we got to charge something to have more counter people. So we started, I think, at $100 a month rent, and they had to be certified and have insurance. But that's kind of how it all began.
Yeah, you gave Chris Aceto an office at 19 years of age and brought him out to California.
Chris was. We gave Chris an office, and he helped. He helped with the that whole personal training scene, but he also helped us develop our line of supplements.
I mean, Chris was doing diets out of that gym. Probably one of the first, diet gurus working out of Gold's Gym. I mean, it was almost a dream position for a 19-year-old kid. What made you think that he had the talent to do that?
Well, he was either married or dating Laura Cravell, who was working for us. So they were a power couple, sort of.
Yeah.
Laura was certainly kind of ahead of her time in terms of the female bodybuilding. We really pioneered that. Pete Grimkowski was dating Lisa Lyons.
Ah, right.
She became the first sort of superstar female body. Well, Corey Everson was one of my first house guests. She was interior designer in Wisconsin, and she knew I was working as an architect in LA, and she contacted me about getting a job. I really think the fitness end of it was second priority for her. And her husband, of course, Jeff Everson, said he loved to write for magazines, so I introduced him to Weider. So he became an editor of Muscle and Fitness. She became 6 or 7-time Miss Olympia.
Yeah, 6 times. I didn't know that you gave them their first break in California. That's an interesting story, because I know they were from Wisconsin. I didn't know that.
I remember because I was remodeling my place in Venice, and I gave them my old refrigerator, which unfortunately broke down after a month. So I think that's why it sticks in my mind.
Did you think that she had the talent to become Miss Olympia when you saw her?
Well, I don't know that we were focused on Miss Olympia. She just was. She's a very vivacious, bubbly, sexy woman. I mean, she still is. I mean, she's just an incredible talent, and yeah. I mean, I certainly, I thought she looked great. I wasn't thinking 6 times Miss Olympia then.
Right. Another person that you really, I mean, you found a lot of great talents, but let's face it, John Cena worked behind the counter at Gold's Gym, and you got
that was way after I met him. I mean, I met him. He was out on spring break to see an ex-girlfriend, and I saw him in the parking lot, and at the time, Marky Mark, eventually Mark Wahlberg was training in the gym, and so was Matt Damon. And he looked like a Matt Damon. People don't seem to see the connection, but he looked like Matt Damon with big arms, with muscles.
Yeah.
I actually approached him in the parking lot, and I think I scare maybe 3 of the 4 people I approach. But I said, I'm Ed Connors. I'm one of the owners. Have you ever thought about professional wrestling? And he said it would be his dream. I mean, those were his exact words.
Really? I didn't know that. Huh?
He said, well, I'd love to, I'd love to do it. I said, well, but there's no way I could come out here. He was graduating from college and back in Massachusetts. He said he had no way of getting out here. And I said, well, let's stay in touch, and you can come out here, and you can stay with me till you get settled, and I'll get you a job. And he came out after he graduated, and he eventually started moving equipment for Brad Baker, another house guest of mine, and then who was eventually with Muscle Tech, and then with another supplement company in Florida. But he gave John a job moving equipment, and then we eventually opened up a supplement store within the gym, and John worked that. And so 18 months after I met him, he had a contract with WWE and moved to Louisville.
How did that happen? I know you had a very good relationship with Vince McMahon, and you've sent a lot of people over to him, but I mean, what made you think that, hey, this guy, not only, I mean, he's got a good look, obviously, but what made you think he was going to be a star in the WWE?
Well, he had a telegenic look. I was partners in a gym in Atlanta with Sting and Lex Luger. Sting used to work for me, the wrestler Sting.
Right.
And there's a certain kind of look that that's really suited for television. And John had that square jaw, that look, and he had again it's just a look people have that I can't explain it, but I didn't know he could rap. I didn't know he could act. I didn't know, I didn't know all that, but he just had a great physique and good face, and he was very hardworking. I don't know that I mean, I've had over 700 house guests in 40 years, and I don't know that anyone has worked as hard as he did. He was a machine. He was just incredible.
Yeah, the famous house, several houses, but the one that I stayed at that I thought was amazing was the one right on Venice Beach there. That was, I'm still mad that you sold that house because that was the
I
greatest.
am too. You know, again, if we had the shared economy, if Airbnb had existed, believe me, I would not have sold anything. But you know, again, it's a different world we live in. It's
Was it an expensive house to maintain? Is that why you got rid of it?
No, it was actually in foreclosure. It was part of the housing collapse in '93.
Right.
And I bought it for $1.1 million. I sold it for $3 million, and it's now for sale for $6 million.
Wow, the prices went up crazy there. You're probably pissed that you sold it now when you see the prices now.
Well, you know, it's actually painful for me to be in Venice, given what happened with Gold's Gym, but. You know, no, you can't look back, and I'm kind of done. I'm kind of done with stuff, and I love LA, but I don't miss the traffic right now.
Where are you living now, Ed?
I'm in Battle Creek, Michigan, of all places.
Wow, how'd you get there?
I'm working on a gym I designed 18 years ago that I'm looking to remodel.
Really? So, what gym is that?
It was a Gold's Gym. It's now called Blue Moon Fitness.
Interesting. Okay.
It's a low-cost model, a low-price gym, and so even if you come once in a blue moon, it's worth it.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're still in the gym business. Let's talk about some of your famous house guests. We talked about Cena. One of your favorites, I know personally because I talk to him all the time, is Jimmy Quinn. Tell me about how you met him and how you got him out there.
Yeah, I forget how I think he was bouncing in a bar or in New York, or I forget exactly how I met him. But you know, he was big and had a good look. I think too, I was thinking about him. Actually, it was the same time that the Ultimate Warrior was a house guest, and Jim Hellwig, and they looked so much alike that I've always thought that, you know, one reason these wrestlers burn out or get in trouble is they're on the road for, 25 days of the month. And I thought, well, it's, you know, if we did what the magicians do in Vegas and have twins or doubles, you could have one wrestler sort of hibernating and recuperating in 2 weeks, and the other one on the road for those 2 weeks, and just change off.
Right.
And Jimmy Quinn with his dark hair, and if he grew it longer, and he was almost the same height and weight. And with the makeup too. I mean, I bought Hellwig or Jim Ultimate Warrior his first makeup kit because back in those days they were promoting heels, bad guys.
Right.
And Sting was his partner on the road, and they were both good-looking guys. And I said, well, we got to make you unattractive. We got to go to the warp. So the makeup costume place on Pico Boulevard still exists in LA. I'll never forget going in there and buying the makeup kits and sending it to him. But so Jimmy, the thought was that I told Jimmy, I always tell the guys, give it 3 years. If you're not a pro by then you move on. And so it was actually his third year, and Jimmy was all prepared to go into wrestling and be a partner with Hellwig. They got along great, and who knows where that would have gone.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that, to be honest with you. I know Jimmy loved bodybuilding, though, but...
He loved bodybuilding, but he was also realistic. And, he did it. I was there in Vegas. I think it was the North Americans then that he won and got a pro card.
Yeah.
And he had thanks to Vince McMahon, again, that was when Vince had the World Bodybuilding Federation. Jimmy had a good 8 or 9 career with them.
Oh, yeah, he made bucks.
Almost all those guys were house guests of mine, or people that I had sort of discovered. Eddie Robinson, Gary Stridham.
Sure.
Who am I missing? Troy Zucolato.
Right.
These were all people that I knew and recommended him. Vince tried to buy Gold's Gym, and then said we wanted too much money, but he ended up losing more than we were asking when he did that Football Federation.
So he could have bought Gold's Gym then for that amount of money.
Yeah, he could have. In hindsight, it was a mistake that he didn't. But
wow.
He would have been a wonderful partner.
Oh yeah, for certain. That would have been a dream team right there. Now, Jimmy, you had a pretty much, I mean, you had a lot of good relationships with these top pros. A lot of them stayed at your house. You know, they were personal friends of yours. But you always declined when you were invited to people's weddings. Why is that?
Well, no, that's not true at all. You can imagine you can imagine being a gym owner with 12,000 members, how many weddings you get invited to, and you know there's only so many crock pots you can buy.
Right.
So back in the day, I guess I got notorious. It's kind of embarrassing, really, but I would wait a year to send a gift to see if the marriage lasted that long. And so if I ended up giving a gift or going to the wedding, people look at it as a vote of confidence.
Right. Well, you did go to Jimmy Quinn's wedding. You told me. Yeah,
that was wonderful. And see, but he would keep coming to me and saying, Ed, I'm going to get married. No, I said, no, way too soon. He waited till he was, I think, 37.
He listened to you, yeah. He
so,
listened to you.
And he's still married to the same woman. They have a lovely son, Brady.
That's right.
So no, he waited. He listened to me, and God bless him for that, because I think too many people married too young. You know, you can't. Too many millennials, especially, they want it all. They want the nice car, the nice wife, pretty wife, a house, kids.
Yeah.
You know, if you want something different out of life, and I'm not saying it's better, you got to sacrifice.
Yeah, no, you're right. You always said that guys like to play house too much. These bodybuilders, right?
Pardon me?
Your famous saying was that these bodybuilders like to play house too much, right? You know,
Gosh, I don't remember that.
Jason Arntz told me you told him that. You said, Jason, don't play house.
Oh. Well, I think you're right. In the old days, I used to blame the men more for getting their girlfriends pregnant, but I've since changed my feelings on that.
Oh, you have.
I guess after seeing that movie Species, where the female is out to procreate, and of course these are prime candidates. So, no, actually, it's interesting. Like John Cena, his high school sweetheart came out after he moved out of my place. He stayed at another house I owned in Venice, which I co-owned with Flex Wheeler.
Oh, really? Right. I remember that house too.
Flex. And he moved into there, and he invited his high school sweetheart out, and her name was Elizabeth. And and she didn't like Venice. You know, Venice, you have to be sort of a Venetian to live in Venice. It's not for everybody. And I loved it. I'm a Venetian, but she hated it, so he sent her home. He was on a mission. And I told him, I said, John, you know, if this is meant to be, you'll marry her 10 years from now. Well, I think it was 12 years later they got married. It lasted less than 2 years.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, and John is, who knows what his status is, marital status is now. But
let's talk about another guy that you were very close to, Mike Matarazzo, who's rest in peace.
One of my favorites, and sadly gone from us now. But I asked him before he died if he had any regrets, and he said no. He'd seen the world and had an amazing life, and was very grateful. He was married 5 times, and I mean, people, you can blame whatever, but that takes a toll on you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also genetics. You know, your genetics, you can't escape.
Yeah, his father died relatively young. I'm still in touch with his mother and sister, and his mother was wonderful. She's one of the few parents of the guys that I've had as house guests that I've met. Mike was sort of stranded in Venice by an unscrupulous promoter. You probably know who I mean.
Yeah.
And he walked into my office and said, Ed, Paul DeMeo said if I was ever in trouble, I should come see you. And I said, God, you're not leaving here until you turn pro. Because, you know, he was, I don't know, in the early 20s and 5'10" and 265 pounds with probably 22-inch biceps even then. And I said, he said, you better talk to my parents. So I flew home to an Easter dinner that I'll never forget. I never had a big Italian Easter dinner. You know, we had the lasagna and the ham and turkey. I mean, everything. Sicilian sausage, and it was like a 4-hour dinner. And I told Mike's dad, if your son comes out to LA and stays with me and trains for the USA's, he'll probably turn pro and be making serious, you know, I remember saying $350,000 a year income. And sure enough, Mike came out, you know, February of '91. He stayed until, well, the contest in July of that year, and he got a pro card. It was his second contest. The Olympia was his third. And I looked at it. He showed me his tax returns for the next 8 or 9 years. He made, over 350 grand for the following 8 years.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
So he had, unfortunately, the final divorce kind of, that he had, that took everything. But he had an amazing career. He saw the world. He's been to probably more countries than I have.
Interesting. Now, yeah, I always found that story really amazing, that you are the one who convinced his dad that he actually had the potential to be a star, because his dad didn't want him to be a bodybuilder, right? Or didn't think he should be moving out of the state, right?
Yeah, his dad, he was unemployed at the time. He had been working for the state with Paul DeMeo. They were doing highway maintenance in Massachusetts, which actually paid pretty well.
Yeah.
But then he got laid off. So, but he had charisma and personality, and he stayed at the house with Akam Albrick, who I also got interested in, German pro bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And Hani Von Aken, I don't know if people remember her.
Yep, of course.
She was one of the early fitness gals.
It's interesting because Mike beat Flex Wheeler, who was the hands-down favorite for that 91 USA. No one thought Mike Matarazzo would win. You and him were probably the only ones who thought it.
Well, again, I know that Flex was sort of favored going in, and Mike was coming out of nowhere, and it was a very, it was just an amazing year. It was it doesn't get much better than that when the Olympia is your third contest.
Yeah, exactly. Talk to me about Jay Cutler. How'd you find him?
Well, Jay was, he had come out to like Matarazzo, he had won like a Gold's Gym Classic back in Massachusetts, and he'd come out. That was when Gold's Gym was putting on contests, and he came out to Venice with Kerry, and I saw him in the gym, and introduced myself, and said, you basically make yourself at home. And I said, where are you staying? And he was staying at the time a very bad area of LA, a cheap motel.
Right.
And I said, you need to get out of there. So I invited him and Kerry to stay at my house, and he came back many times, more than I can remember. And I don't know, he might have stayed for weeks at a time, or maybe 5 weeks. But he was a great house guest because he was so flexible in terms of. I usually had 3 or 4 people staying there, and he would basically say, who wants to train legs, or who wants to do this or that, where some of the guys were very rigid. And he, in his book, in fact, he says he learned more at my house than anything. That's why I call it kind of a guru house, because he would talk to other bodybuilders from all over the world about how they were training, their diet, what they were taking. And he said that he got a lot out of that. And that's hard to get nowadays. You can't just casually, bump into somebody in the gym and download all you're doing. But if you live under the same roof, you really can't hide anything. No. And Jake, sleep. I don't think he or Lee Priest slept more. But I think a lot of bodybuilders nowadays, or fitness people, don't get enough sleep, and those 2 guys did, and look at the results. But Jay was, just a great personality. Just he was a favorite house guest of a lot of the. So was Frank McGrath. Frank was everyone's favorite.
Why do you think that Jay became so successful, not only as a bodybuilder but as a businessman? What? And then you got a guy like Lee Priest, who is probably just as talented as Jay, but he just kind of self-destructed,
Well, it's. I remember, talking, thanks to Facebook and actually reconnecting with a lot of my former house guests. One thing a lot of them tell me, which kind of comes as a surprise, is that what they remember about me was how hard I worked, or how many hours I put in. I was working 100-hour weeks, but it didn't really seem like work.
Right.
And people like Jay, I think, were, when in his waking hours, he was driven. He had a mission. He was like John Cena. He was on a mission. He was focused. Lee, unfortunately, Lee could have done a lot better had he stayed in shape, more during the year. But he wasn't willing to do that. Jay was. They would working. You could have to ask him, but 52 weekends a year, he was probably booked for 45 of them.
You're probably right.
So Matarazzo. So these guys were out making money, working the grassroots and getting a fan base that way. Lee could have done that too, but I don't remember him. I don't remember virtually no guest posing, which is a shame. And he was content to get his his salary from whoever he was sponsoring him, and Jay was out there, beating the bushes.
Yeah.
But Lee was incredibly gifted. I mean, just he turned 21 in my place. He spent his first 5 months in America, and given how he looked then, he has to be one of the most incredible bodybuilders I've ever met.
Is it true that you were responsible for helping him get his pro card?
Yeah, actually, it was a fortuitous. Jim Mannion happened to be in Gold's Gym Venice back then, and I said, the Ironman was coming up or some pro contest in California, and I said, Jim, this kid is 3 times Mr. Australia but doesn't have a pro card. And he got on the phone and called whoever was head of the Australian Federation and said, let's get this guy a pro card, and he did. And then he competed, and Lee, I know he won prize money, so he placed high enough in his first pro show in California to make money.
Wow, great story. Let's talk about someone who's maybe not as successful of a character, Craig Titus, because he was a house guest of yours. He stayed there many times. I actually saw him there while I was staying there. He was sunning himself on the roof. What was your first impression of Craig when you met him?
Again, I forget how I met him. He might have, like a lot of the guys, he would come down to. Maybe I, knew that he won a contest, and then, he had a good. I remember I had him framed. He had 18 magazine covers before he even turned pro. So he was very, he was photogenic. He had a great look. He could sell magazines. So I knew he would get covers, and if he would be wearing our clothes or, being shot in Gold's Gym Venice, it would help get us, more notoriety, be more well known. So I'm sure I remember him at the house with Tom Prince.
Right.
They were both great bodybuilders. I would say Tom was the better bodybuilder, but Craig had a great look. They both had a great look. And Craig is a tragic story. I gave up. This is his 3rd time in jail, and I think our system has a way of getting people to come back or getting people back. I mean, it's sick, but he provoked it himself. But he was in jail initially in Houston, and then he was in jail in Lompoc in California. I visited him 3 weekends. I had to give up 3 weekends to go see him in this federal prison in Lompoc.
Wow.
And I would send him money, bring him supplements, write letters, give magazines, and we had all these plans when he came out to revitalize his career. And then I think I saw him for all 15 minutes, and he went to Vegas and got in trouble, and now he's in jail, I think, for life. I don't believe he killed the woman that he's accused of killing.
You don't think? Who do you think did it?
Well, I think his wife did it, but
wow.
Just trying to cover for her because he was actually I was one of my jobs to basically suspend people for fighting in the gym, and he was the most. I had to suspend him 3 times, punching people out. So here's a guy who he could kill somebody with one blow or a chokehold or something. Right. So to think that he did this clumsy murder in a house in Vegas, from what I've read, I just don't believe it. That's not his style. I mean, if he, be like a big bodybuilder trying to kill somebody, it wouldn't be with a taser and falling down the stairs.
Right.
So I think he's innocent, and God bless him. But yeah, again, recreational drugs probably altered his mind and caused him to do crazy stuff.
Yeah. Ed, we could probably go on all day. We'll probably have to get you back for a part 2. But who was the most surprising star that you never suspected coming? Like a guy you let stay at your house and you said, he's good, but I don't think he's going to amount to too much, and he wound up turning into a huge star.
Boy, that's a tough question. I guess, the reverse of that is almost more true. The people that
exactly.
I saw so much potential with, and then they unfortunately didn't have the career that I thought they could have had. Boy, that is really tough.
Did anyone shock you? Like you thought, maybe they might not make it, but then they wound up making it bigger than you ever expected, because you got a pretty good eye. You're pretty accurate with the guys who were good. You knew who the talent pool was. I mean, you always seem to have the best people at your house and under your umbrella, so to speak.
I love, given how much these contests have kind of gone downhill. I mean, one of my house guests said, there's more talent on your roof than at these shows these days.
You're right.
Maybe you saw that. It's the people that are no longer with us that had so much potential, like Ed Van Amsterdam, incredible talent. That just, Luke Wood from Australia. I'm trying to, it'd be a long list of people that I think, again, it's more than lifting weight. You probably heard me say that,
Sure.
Dave, right?
Yeah.
There are many factors. It's not just about being in the gym, doing it's diet and personality and drive and mental ability and emotion. So there's a lot of factors in there. I'm thinking now. Well, Sergey Constant is a surprise, perhaps.
He's huge. He's huge.
When I met him, he had 30,000 followers, and I got him an invite to the WWE tryouts in Florida. Now he has over 2 million, and he's working for a supplement company, or sponsored by a supplement company in Miami. I mean, so that to see that kind of rise in 3 years, that blows me away.
Ed, do you like social media? Do you think it like when you compare it back to the era where we came from, the 80s, 90s, do you like that magazine era better, or do you like social media era now, the way the sport has evolved?
Well, the magazine certainly worked for us. I guess the social media would have, but so many people were sensitive to being photographed in the gym. I can't imagine the issues gym owners have nowadays with smartphones.
Yeah.
Basically a camera. You can imagine that you've got celebrities training at Gold's Venice, and people are taking pictures now of them working out. Yeah. That could be a real issue. I wish I'd had the internet, when I owned Gold's Gym, because I could have communicated with all our gym owners more easily on a daily or weekly basis. That would have been I really miss not having the internet, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Gold's Gym, I mean, what you turned it into, what you created over there, is something that I don't think could ever be done again. It was really the golden era. I mean,
I tell people the stars won't be aligned like that again in terms of where everything is. The change in the gym business, which now is it's chaotic out there. There's so many. It's so fractured right now. And everybody's a trainer. People training people online. My God, it's just it's crazy. It's just a whole new world. So it was this very special time. I knew it was amazing, but how amazing I really didn't know. And unfortunately, Arnold has been kind of part of it all these years too. So he's kind of the common link from pumping iron to now. He's still out there.
Yeah, and he's still a bodybuilder at heart, and he's still doing videos.
Yeah,
in the gym.
I really respect that he hasn't disowned his roots.
Yeah.
I really admire that about him, because so many people I know have that they don't really realize what got them there. And he's back actually. He was loyal to Joe Gold, so he never really trained in Gold's Venice while Pete, Tim, and I owned it. And now he's back there, and actually I think he's helped save it from being taken over by Google.
Yeah, Google owns the land that it's on, right?
Well, I think they have the lease. They own the lease, so I understand they've given Gold's maybe 5 more years. But I read that Venice Beach is the second biggest tourist attraction in LA County after Universal Studios. So I have to believe Muscle Beach and Gold's Gym are part of the Venice scene.
It's like a historic landmark. It should be declared.
I hope Google will allow them to stay, because it's part of LA.
Yeah. You might have to move the Mecca to someplace else, Ed, and start over. We might need your expertise.
Well, I am working on some things.
You're always working on something. Ed, it was a pleasure to talk to you today. I know our fans and all the viewers out there loved hearing these stories, because this is stuff that you don't see. This is behind the scenes type stuff. You were an instrumental mover in our industry, and I think a lot of guys out there have you to thank for a lot of their success, myself included. You let me stay at your house. You were very gracious. You always opened up the doors at Gold's Gym to me, and you made it feel like home.
Well, thank you. Well, you can only talk so much about the past, and then it gets diminishing returns for even me or the public. But it's been great, kind of reminiscing. And again, you were part of a special era. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ed, and that's going to take us to the end of another episode of Live With, brought to you by Yamamoto Nutrition. I'm Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next time.